Hello, this is Demetrius Gelatis with Minnesota Pool Boot Camp. Just uploading a conversation I had with Danny Olson on February 23rd of 2021 to the Cue It Up Network. So hope you guys enjoy. And if you have questions for Danny, hopefully he'll, if you find this episode on Facebook, hopefully he'll be following the comments. And feel free to ask, or maybe we can have him on again at some point to get more into his opinions on different things about the state of pool. But for now, let's just get to know Danny Olson a little bit, and we'll go from there. Thank you. How have you been, Danny?
Pretty good. Been playing a lot of pool lately. Been hanging out in Denver with my mom lives here, so I stay with her. And the pool scene is just great around here, so I never want to leave when I'm here.
Awesome. Is that where you're at right now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So for those that don't know, I jumped the gun. I didn't realize Danny was in Denver now, and that was an hour difference in time zone. But so yeah, that's awesome. What is it about the Denver pool scene that's different from I suppose what part of South Dakota were you in? Sioux Falls before? Or where did you where was your hometown?
I'm a little north of Sioux Falls. I'm in Brookings.
Okay.
And yep, there ain't much for pool around there.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. But what in Denver, most of the time in a lot of areas across the, metros, there's not a lot of open tournaments these days for players at your level. A lot of them are, Fargo capped or handicapped. What's it like out there? Are you able to play at a lot of events?
There are a lot of tournaments. It's mostly weekly stuff and monthly stuff, and I can play in quite a bit of it.
Okay,
But,
cool.
Yeah. Mostly what I really like though is just that there's so many people to play. There's lots of action. There's just lots of stuff going on. I get a lot more lessons when I'm down here too versus up in South Dakota. So that's always nice too.
Yeah, not to mention it's beautiful area, man. It's there's very few parts of the world I think are more beautiful than like the Rocky Mountain area. So
Absolutely.
that's not bad either. So then yeah, I was going to kind of ask you, growing up in South Dakota, how is it like? How did you? Well, I don't really know much, and I think I'm really excited. By the way, I'm really excited to have you because I know, of course, I've known you. You've been eliminating me from tournaments now for well over a decade, so I'm very familiar with Danny Olson. But there's some people out there that might not be, and so I'm really glad to have you on the line because, in my opinion, you're one of the, definitely one of the top upcoming U.S. players. There's still a few, guys like Shane that, of course, is at top of the world. And there's just a couple guys that have been out there a long time, Oscar Bergman, whatever but they're kind of like old guard. And I feel like you're kind of, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of my picks as far as the hottest young guns in the U.S. And when it comes to, representing the U.S. Internationally, I'm really excited to watch what's been going on. And the world, the people that listen to this podcast should really know who you are and get a chance to know you. So I'm really grateful for joining me. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you got started. Like what got you into pool? How old were you? How'd that go?
Well, it's kind of funny. My parents, they both played pool my whole life pretty much. And they tried to get me to start playing when I was around 7 or 8. And I wanted like absolutely nothing to do with it. I hated pool.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So they tried for a few years, I think, and then they gave up. And it just so happened one day after school, I was probably like 5th or 6th grade. I went to my grandpa's bar after school. I walked there and I just started hitting balls. And I don't remember what happened, but I completely fell in love with the game. And I ended up going there every day after school from the time I was like 12 to 14. And I would just play 20 or 30 racks of 8-ball. And not long after that, I started playing pool league and started playing a few local tournaments. And that was it.
So yeah, once you started get into the do you think it was the competition that was missing from when your parents were trying to push you into it? Do you think like once you started being able to play other players and beat other players, or was it just once they weren't pushing you and you just had a chance to kind of play around on your own? What was it about the game that you think connected with you?
I definitely love the tournaments and the competitive side of it, but that's not what originally drew me in. I think it was just really it was something to do with eight ball. I think I really loved that particular game. I was really into the patterns and figuring it out like a puzzle. And like I said, I would just sit by myself and play for hours, and I never wanted to stop. So
You never have. So it's like you're
yeah,
living your
yeah,
best
I guess
life.
I haven't.
And that was the rest is history, except for the future. So that's awesome. So uh we're so once you started getting into it, then you started wanting to get good. Where like did you have teachers out there, or who was the one, were there players that you were like modeled, like who was the influential teachers as you developed your pool game?
I'd have to say definitely Shane Van Boning. He was uh he was around me a lot because we were in the same area and I got to see him play a lot. He was definitely probably at least when I was young, he was the one I was watching the most impressed with by far. So
Sure. Did he ever help you with your pool game, like give you any kind of coaching or mentoring, or did he just kind of beat you and you try to keep up with him?
yeah, well we did gamble a little bit when I was younger and he never really like showed me anything too specific or helped me too much. I do remember one time he showed me an old like 9 ball pattern drill and he told me that I needed to be able to like run it out 10 times in a row consistently. And I think I since found out that it was one that Nick Varner was famous for creating and sort of marketing.
Gotcha. So yeah, so you know, there's different ways to teach somebody, and with players like that, of course, he just sets the pace. He's a pace setter, and then you just try to keep up with him. But it is pretty cool that you got a chance to know him, and then it's got to help with your confidence to know that once you've played and gambled with him, you can't. It's hard to really be intimidated by anybody, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was definitely a factor. I was lucky that I got to grow up, being so near to him and being able to watch him all the time.
Yeah. And do you mind if I ask how old are you now, Danny? Are you like 28, or like where are you at now?
Just turned 28.
Okay, well, happy birthday. I was pretty
Yep.
close. So then, so then, so I'm trying to kind of put this in mind. So you started getting heavy into it probably around age 12, and so that was
Yep.
like 2005 ish, which is probably around the time. So you were probably just in the generation that started having the luxury of YouTube and like pro pool being streamed or available on YouTube. Did you watch a lot of pool when you were first learning to play, or was it mostly just modeling yourself after live players you got to see?
Oh no, I watched a ton of pool. To begin with, it was AccuStats. I think when I started watching a lot, YouTube wasn't quite a thing, or I didn't have access to internet. But I probably had over like 500 videos of AccuStats, and I watched them
Wow,
all the time. And I was really into like learning the game and studying the game. I had books and instructional videos, and I was pretty crazy about it.
that's awesome. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I like that. I like learning this about you. What okay, top couple favorite pool books. Which were the ones that you thought were the most impactful?
Top favorite pool books. Okay, this is a good question. Well, to start, I probably have every pool book ever published, barring like a few rare ones. But the ones that jump to mind are probably Eddie Robbins' Winning One Pocket and his
Okay.
other pocket book. I'm not like super into One Pocket, but I just think those are like really, really great books. And Lee Brett's Secret Art of Pool. It's kind of a short and simple book on fundamentals, but it's really on point, I think. And then there was a book published a few years ago. I think it's called Build Your Game. I'm not sure who the author is, but it just has a lot of really good mental game advice in it.
Build your game. You know what? I will admit I have not read any of those. So that's pretty exciting. I've read a few, but I think yeah, I guess there's been a lot. I think when I was young, there was only a few billiard publications, and now there's a lot out there. And so I have not kept up on everything. And you might be one of the only people, like you might be one of the first people, I should say, that has outbooked me. I have 500 AccuStat matches. I thought I had quite a few on my shelf, but I'm not even sure if I'm in the triple digits. That's insane. That's awesome. And so, yeah, so you really studied the game and then reading all these books and stuff. So, that's a little bit, uh, not, most of the top players are out there just playing and they just kind of learn the stuff organically while they're competing. But you really just said, you know what? Why wouldn't I want to learn everything there is to know, huh?
Yeah, I'm like that with everything. I love learning from books and videos and stuff and from other people. I can
Very cool.
I mean, I think it definitely helps you. It can help the learning process move a little quicker, but like you can see from the way most pro players go about it, it definitely isn't probably necessary to get to the top level, if you know what I mean.
Well, I kind of always looked at it like there's different ways to learn the information. And so one of my pet peeves is when people say things like, well, you know, look at Roberto Gomez and he's not, watching AccuStats matches and reading books, or getting instructions. So then,
Yeah,
yeah. But it's like, yeah, but he's out touring internationally playing, top flight players every weekend for 10 years. So if you want to do
yeah,
that, then you can go ahead and skip the books. But if you're not going to do that, then what's, then just, what I mean? It's not all or nothing. There's a lot of ways to learn. And I mean, of course, if you want to be number one in the world, I think that's probably the best way to do it is just dive in and don't look back. But you know what? When you're growing up in South Dakota in a small town, you have to take advantage of the resources that are out there.
exactly. Yep.
So then when you were watching these AccuStats tapes, a lot of them were, before Shane was around. I'm really curious to know who were some of your favorite players of the classic, 80s and 90s that you were watching on AccuStats.
Oh, Efren Reyes was a big one. I pretty much had any 9 ball or one pocket video he was in. I have them all.
Cool.
Buddy Hall, Nick Varner, Earl Strickland, Corey Deuel, pretty much all the big names you'd be familiar with, from the 80s and 90s.
That's really cool. Yeah, those are all I'm right there with you. So that what's interesting to me is that's such a wide array of styles. You've got Efren, who's like the finesse, spinny kind of creative guy. You've got Earl, who's like the powerhouse, run the table over guy, explosive guy, and then you've got like Nick Varner and Buddy Hall, who are kind of like game management, tight cue ball, tight pattern kind of guy.
Yep.
Which style do you feel like you play?
Which style? Well, definitely not Efren. My game is probably as far away from that style as you could get. I'd have to say I'm probably most similar to Corey Deuel, his
Okay.
stroke and game, just out of those
Yeah.
players.
Well, he's got a really good blend of all of those things because he has a lot of creativity and finesse. And other than Efren, I mean, when people are talking about the most creative players, and the really good touch and feel, and reading the rack and dead combos and stuff. Corey's always been able. He's always been kind of like the USA's Efren. He's got the stroke and firepower of a gunslinger, and then he's got like the patterns and cue ball. I mean, he's really a rounded player. I think sometimes Corey gets a little underrated because he wasn't able to keep up with the European entourage once 2010 hit. But I'll tell you, I have mad respect for that guy's game.
Oh, me too. His just his pattern play, his decision making, his ability to get out of tough situations with those creative shots that nobody else sees. It's really it's amazing to me. I've watched him play anytime I get a chance just to see if he shoots anything I never would have shot.
Yeah. So you're watching AccuStats, you're reading books, you're playing a lot. You're getting to play with some great players, playing some tournaments. What age were you when you kind of felt like you might be able to do something kind of special with the game? Did you know that right away, or was there something that happened that kind of made you think maybe I could go all the way with this?
The first time I watched Corey Deuel play on ESPN, I don't remember who he was playing, but it was the first time I saw Poole on TV, and like there was like a switch got flipped in me. I just I knew I was gonna play pool. It was the only thing for me. Not sure how old I was. I think it was a few years after I started playing, so I was probably 13 or 14.
Wow. That's really cool. It's fun that you can point to a specific moment.
Yep.
It just kind of shows the impact of that. And then you were just kind of like all out. And then it's got to be tough, like, because in South Dakota, in a smaller town, especially, you don't have a driver's license. Some of the bars you probably can't go in. Like, tell me about, like, what were some of the tournaments you'd play, and what was the pool scene like when you were 14, 15, kind of up and coming?
Well, it was the kind of stereotypical seedy bar tournaments and hustling, actually, to begin with. Um, there was there's a lot of league pool going on, so I played league, and that qualified me for the state tournaments in South Dakota, which I played 3 or 4 times a year. There was like an 8 ball, 9 ball, 10 ball, and there really wasn't a lot of options in South Dakota. There was maybe a tournament a month I could play in. So my parents, who were very supportive of me, especially when I was young and I needed them to be supportive to play the game at all, they were really focused on getting me out of South Dakota as much as they could. So I think when I was 14 years old, for Christmas, for Christmas, I actually got a entry fee receipt for the Derby City Classic. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, and they had to tell me. But so that kind of gives you an idea of like what it was like. South Dakota just
Oh,
doesn't
oh,
have.
oh. I thought you meant that for Christmas that they bought you an entry, and you're just saying they just bought you like a souvenir. They got you like a
Oh no,
souvenir.
they
Oh,
bought, they paid my
oh,
entry fees for the
oh, okay.
Derby City Classic, and
Okay, for a minute I thought,
they
hey,
ramped.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas. Here's a receipt of somebody else that got to play. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, so you did get to play.
they wrapped up the receipt from the purchase and
That's
showed it to me. I'm like, what is this?
Oh, that's awesome. That is like the coolest thing ever, because I can relate. Like, once you go to a pro event and you get to see all the people that you've been watching on AccuStats and hearing about and seeing on ESPN, and you get to see them all walking around the hallway and playing matches 5 feet away from you, it is just like supercharges the adrenaline. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember the first time walking in the main tournament room when they had the Derby at the Executive West. So I think that it would have been like 2007 maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, everywhere I looked was somebody I knew who I'd never seen before, just only on AccuStats or maybe YouTube. And it was quite an experience for a 14-year-old kid.
Did you get to play the events then?
Yep, I played like a junior thing, I think.
Okay.
At the time, what really wasn't a big deal, and I played the main event, the 9 ball.
Wow. How did that go? What was that like as a 14-year-old playing in the Derby 9 ball?
It's kind of funny. My very first match, I played a really good player from Europe. I think he still plays. His name's Hugh GC.
Okay. I
Um,
don't.
and he beat me. But the funny thing about the match is one of my favorite players of all time, someone I'd watched a lot and studied a lot, Johnny Archer, was playing the straight pull challenge on the table next to me.
Mm.
And sometime during the match, I lost track of where he was, and he wasn't really paying attention to me, and I just totally ran into him like a train, about knocked him over. And
How did he?
I
How
was
did he handle that?
absolutely. Oh, he was amazing. Like he said no problem, no worries. And I don't. I think he was in the middle of a big straight pull run too. I mean, he was trying to win that contest, but I was mortified.
Oh, it's funny. That's funny. Yeah, they packed those tables in there, man. Yeah, it definitely can happen, especially like, on that first floor when you're in the middle table and there's like, just it can be tough. There's a lot going on. So that's cool. So so you lost to some European champion, and then did you do the rebuy and play a second round?
Yep. I believe I won one match. I don't have any idea who I played, and then I lost my next match.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course that's standard, but I'll tell you, it's pretty cool to just to get to go play and I mean, just even to win a match, even if it was an amateur that was just firing his first derby, that doesn't matter because the pressure and just being on that stage and feeling like and plus you're 14, so there's probably a lot of people watching you compared to like if you're just a regular amateur that shows up and plays, there might not be that many eyes on you, but as a young kid, there's probably a lot of people just kind of checking you out, and you're probably very self conscious, right?
Oh yeah, and at that time I was one of the only young kids playing there. There was maybe two or three other ones. I don't remember who they were, but yeah. So there was a little bit of attention on me, and it was all pretty new to me. So
But yeah, so that has to change things because when you come back home, then you've got to feel like I play in professional tournaments. Like not like you're snooty or something, but it's like it's got to change kind of like your self image of who you feel like you are and where you feel like you belong. After something like that, you've got to kind of feel like, well, that's how I need to play. That's where I want to be.
oh yeah, really, I feel like that particular tournament really lit a fire under me. After that, I came home and I practiced like crazy for like 3 or 4 months, probably like 12 hours a day, I think. At least when the
Sheesh.
summer hit. I was in school, but once the summer came around, that's all I did was play pool after that.
Yeah. So when you were playing, did you have a table at home?
Yep, I had a belly bar table and a gold crown floor.
Wow. So when you're practicing by yourself, what kinds of stuff did you like to do as a kid that you I mean, were you just playing and running racks or were you working on certain techniques? Like I'm kind of curious what you did then and then what you do now, but I'll save what you do now. What did you do as a kid? Were you just playing?
No, I wasn't. Let me think. Well, I was really into straight pool when I was a kid. I played a lot of straight pool, and I'd keep track of my innings and keep track of my average for like the week,
Wow.
and I was always trying to improve that. And other than that, I remember I was obsessed about being able to break hard. Like, like I had a bit of a problem. I would spend hours breaking, and I wasn't trying to control the cue ball. I was just trying to smash them as hard as I could. I just thought that was so cool, and that probably had something to do with being around Shane and him having such a good hard break.
No, that makes perfect sense. I can see you at 14 years old, 15 years old, trying to break the one ball on your break shot. That's awesome. You're just
Yeah,
like no control, no form. I'm not okay. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Just trying to smash the one ball in half.
I
But
mean,
you know
I
what? And
mean,
we'll come into this. But like, as far as I'm concerned, I've been extremely, extremely, extremely impressed with your break and watching your matches that we'll get to with McMahon, Robinson, and some of these things. Like, it's you know it's you've grown up, Danny. You've grown up. So that's all I can
yep.
say. So that's cool. So there you are. So then you mentioned action too. So you were said you were getting into some money games too. What when did you start betting money on pool?
The, um, as soon as I started playing, probably.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was,
that's cool.
they weren't big money games, but like I said, I started playing out of my grandpa's bar, and I was friends with all the local patrons. I knew them all by name, and they're like family. They kind of took care of me, and they knew I was obsessed with pool, and they just saw me practicing all the time. So they would come in. They would come in the pool room because it was a separate room, and they'd be like, "Hey, do you want to play some?" And I would say, "Okay, for how much?"
Yeah,
So
that
I ended up playing like a lot of cheap games, like dollar games, $5 games, stuff like that.
yeah. And was it mostly bar table 8 ball or bar table 9 ball, or were you guys playing big table, just a little of everything?
It was all bar table 8 ball. That's the only game I played probably for my first 2 or 3 years.
Well, this is pretty incredible because one of the things that I think um, I love this because I guess to me there's a lot of narratives out there like, well, top players don't grow up and play bar pool, and top players don't, they get mentored by other great players, and they just, top players don't play leagues, and top players don't read books. But here's a guy that is kind of in a rural area with bar pool and amateur players, and you're playing leagues, and you're playing, on bar tables, and you're playing amateurs, and you're reading books and studying, and yet you were able to take that game and elevate yourself. How were you able to elevate your game past the level of the local competition? Or did it take going out to bigger tournaments? Like, did you get to where, like, how old were you when you started beating everybody in your hometown?
Um, about 14, probably.
Yeah,
Barring my dad and maybe one other player who were master level players at the time.
sure. So then once you got kind of the spot where you're kind of like, all the regulars, you're hanging out, and everybody, everybody knows where you're at. Like, where do you go from there? Like, how did you keep getting better from that point? Was it just making a point to keep getting into some regional tournaments and some national tournaments? Or tell me about that. I think that's the link that I think a lot of people get stuck at. So I really am interested in that part of your journey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do end up getting stuck there, and that's kind of one of the traps. Um, Probably in any sport, but definitely in pool. If you don't keep playing better players all the time, it's going to be really hard for you to get better. And at the time, like when I was 14, and I was starting to get to the point where I was beating most of the people in South Dakota, barring the elite players there. Um, I probably wouldn't have noticed anything wrong. I probably would have kept doing that for a while, but my mom was aware of that, and she really pushed me to get out of South Dakota and to go to these other tournaments, like whether it was in Minnesota or Iowa. She even took me to one in Texas one time, and I think I was 14. It was the Galveston Open. I think they only had it a few years, but
I remember that. I wasn't there, but I remember that tournament. Yeah.
yep. And she took me to a pretty well-known instructor when I was about that age too, Jerry Brysa,
Mm.
which really helped my game a lot at the time. It definitely set the course for things to come. But yeah, no, she really, she took me to all these places. She really made it so I had all the opportunity I needed to keep improving.
Well, one thing I want to kind of pass on to the listeners, because I couldn't agree more. I mean, you can't. It's really, really, really hard to get. I say that usually the best people can do is about 5 or 10% past their competition level. So it's like once you get to where you're past your competition, it's like, yeah, I'm with you. If you want to keep throwing, you have to play better players. However, the thing where I think some players get discouraged is they say, well, I have to work, I have a family, I can't just travel around and play pool, so I guess I'm stuck. Whereas one of the things you said about playing derby is that after you got home from derby, it put a wind in your sail for 4 months. You were hungry from that. You rode that energy wave for 4 months. And so when you're 14 or 15 or 16 and your mom's taking you around to these tournaments, yes. So to the listeners who are like, well, I can't do all that. It's like, well, yeah, she's taking you to tournaments, but she wasn't taking you on the road 365 days a year. I mean, you had school and you played local, and these tournaments take a big sacrifice of time and money for her. So it's like, I mean, you're probably playing, 4 to 6 events, that are maybe, maybe it was 4, maybe it was 10 a year, but it's not like every weekend you're at a different state. You know what I mean? So, but the thing is that you're young and hungry, so that when she would take you to a Galveston, then you'd come home and practice like a beast for 6 weeks because you'd still be riding that wave of energy. Would you
Yeah,
agree with that?
yeah, it was definitely it was sporadic. Our travels out of South Dakota. I mean, we probably got out of South Dakota 2 or 3 times a year.
Sure, sure. So that's my
Yeah.
point. So the people that say, well, I can't go travel around and play, it's like, you'd be surprised. You don't have to be full time on the road, because my personal experience is when you signed up for a big tournament, like 2 to 4 weeks before that event, you start getting fired up and getting energized. And then after the event, like you say, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months, there's stuff that you've done that you want to keep working on, and stuff that came up that you want to do better, something you saw your opponent do that you want to be able to do like they do. So it's like, you get a few weeks ahead of time and a few months afterwards where you're pretty fired up. So even if you can only make 3 or 4 events a year, if you space them out right and are inspired, you can make that kind of keep your energy levels full, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
So that's
And
pretty cool. So yeah, go ahead.
I should just mention, I should thank my dad for that also. Even though he wasn't the one taking me, he was the one paying for it usually. So
Sure.
thanks, Dad.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's always been in your corner. And I've had a chance. I've seen him rail on you and stuff. And I actually, I think I remember running into you down in Olathe, Kansas, too. I think you were playing with Jesse. I went down there with Jesse. That was like '09. So you might have been a little bit older then. You might have been, I guess, probably 16, 17 at the time. But yeah, you definitely made a point to get out and keep challenging yourself and taking on the best players in the country that you could.
Yep. Yep. That's what you
So
gotta
okay, so
do.
that kind of took you. So then you kind of get to where you were playing really good, and you've always, since I've known you, since like I said, that was 12 years ago. So that's right around 2000. I think that's. I mean, I remember really you kind of came on the scene. If I could remember, somewhere 2010 is kind of when I first started. Well, that's when you first started beating me out of tournaments. You were coming up in Minnesota, and where else did I? Of course, up in Fargo and stuff. You'd always be up at those tournaments at Fargo Billiards. So,
Yep.
tell me about like 2010 to 2020, because that was a 10-year stretch where you were better than all the local players, but you weren't really making a huge run in the pro events that often. Tell me about what that 10 years was like for your pool career.
Well, so in 2010, I would have been, it was 11 years ago, I would have been 17.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the age where I started realizing that I needed to get out even more than I was. I needed to start playing even more top players, and I needed to start moving away from the bar table to the 9 foot. Because up to that point, 90% of my experience or more, maybe 95, was all on a bar table. And which, I love bar table 8 ball a lot. It's probably my favorite game, but my heart this whole time was really set on making it as a professional player, and pros play on 9 foots. So that time from like 2010 to not now, but maybe 3 or 4 years ago, so 2016,
Mm-hmm.
that little stretch of time, I was transitioning really from being a bar table player to a big table player, and it was kind of a rough patch for me because what I found was I didn't have the same confidence on a 9 foot as I did on a bar table, and it really wasn't like a technique or skill. Um, it wasn't like there's a problem there. I'm saying it was more like it was just kind of in my head, and that
Sure.
was something I had to get over. I'm not sure if that really
That's
makes sense, but
No,
that
that
was
makes perfect sense. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do from 17 to 23. That's a harder time because there's a lot of players that are already playing championship speed on a big table by that age, and so all of a sudden, for the first time in your life, instead of being the young gun who's kind of like younger and better, all of a sudden you're like almost playing catch up a little bit, and at a little bit older age.
yeah, and that's how I felt really. And that's what happened. I think I mean eventually I got over it. I started practicing exclusively on a 9 foot. I started prioritizing 9 foot tournaments over bar table tournaments. I started trying to match up with people on 9 footers whenever I could. I mean, eventually I got over it, and I feel like now I'm a better 9 foot player than I'm a bar table player.
Well,
Which
I can see it in your game, and one thing that I've always seen is that you've never had like a bar table. You've never had like you said there. It was maybe a mental thing or a confidence thing or an experience thing or just a number of hours thing, but there was certainly nothing wrong. I mean, you've always been really solid. Like when I think of solid, what I mean is like uh, just when you play 9 foot pool, no matter how good your cue ball and patterns are, there are just going to be not like long, hard shots. I'm not talking like jacked up off the end rail or, spearing balls that are in the middle of the table from, off angles. I'm talking just like half court and 3/4 court shots where there's just a series of shots that, you're the favorite to make them. They're open, they're not hard, but they all have to be struck well. They all require accurate strokes. They all require, they're all missable, and I really enjoy watching you play because when you're playing, it just seems like you're so solid. Your stroke is good, your form is good, and your eye is good, and you really are connected and solid to where I just feel like you put down like the half court and 3/4 court open shots, just really, really, really high regularity. And not making fumbles in those spots just goes such a long way. I've always felt that was one of your superpowers, kind of.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I practice those shots a lot. Actually, I like to when I practice. I don't like to practice shots that are too hard or too easy. So I end up because I want to focus on my stroke a lot when I'm practicing. I'm always usually trying to improve some aspect of my fundamentals. So and I use those level of shots to do that. So that,
Hey,
that
well, I
might
was
be
gonna,
why.
yeah, I was gonna hold off on that, but now I guess that was kind of where I was gonna go at some point. Was you've talked about what you did as a kid when especially with COVID kind of limiting competition over the last year, and just still kind of being having you can't play international events every day. So when you practice on how much are you practicing these days?
As much as I can. Right now, while I'm in Denver, I don't always have access to a table I can practice on, but I'd say maybe I'm getting in on average like 2 to 3 hours a day. Which
Cool.
some days that's because I don't get any in, and some days that's because I get 8 in.
Sure, sure.
Ideally, though, I would be playing 4 to 6 hours a day of good practice.
Yeah, and what does a practice session look like for you? Like, what kind of stuff do you like to work on now? Yeah, just kind of tell me about that.
Oh, now you asked a doozy of a question. I'm kind of right now. I'm in the middle of sort of revamping my practice methods and routine. Um,
Okay.
I'll tell you what I have been doing though. Um, there's a lot of straight pull, a lot of breaking, uh, a lot of work on fundamentals. I do a lot of video work where I videotape myself shooting a lot of shots and just look at what I'm doing, whether I'm dropping my elbow, whether my head's moving, whether my eyes are twitching, just little stuff really. I've been really focused on just getting rid of any little quirks I might have the last 6 months, which I've been making a lot of progress in, and I'm about to kind of slow down with that. And like I said, I want to revamp my practice routine. I was actually I was listening to Fedor Gorse. I think that's how you say it, Fedor.
Yep, I think
He
so
has a
too.
he has a podcast on Joey Ryan's channel, and he was going through sort of what he does for practice and how he goes about it, and I was really impressed with the way he does it, and so that's what brought on this desire to revamp my practice methods, which I haven't quite decided what it's going to look like, but I want to bring a lot more structure to what I'm doing when I'm practicing.
Sure.
Pretty much up till this point in my life, I've always kind of just showed up to the practice table and kind of just did whatever I'm feeling like doing,
Mm.
which is probably not bad, really. It served me well, but I think it's time for more of a regimented, scheduled practice routine, if that makes
Well,
sense.
yeah, what I do, and I'll share a couple thoughts just because I'm interviewing you, but I want to talk to you. I just want to talk to you like I talk to you. So here's my thoughts. What I've been doing for the last few years that's been really enjoyable is that I break my practice sessions down to where I have what I call a core drill, and then a core skill, and then play time. So I think it's important to have play because you got to have time to just play and put it together and have fun and getting, rhythm and handling, just running it. That could be straight pool, that could be playing the ghost, that could just be whatever. But
Oh yeah.
but and the other thing is that I think that when you go down like the fundamental rabbit hole, sometimes you can get to the point where you just get so technical and you're thinking about so much. So, and then it's really dangerous is too, if you start making too many tweaks or worrying about too many things, you know what I mean? It can kind of become a little over analytical. So I think it's important to do that, but I also think it's important to play and put yourself in spots where you're just trying to get the balls in the hole. So anyway, so for me, like a core drill. So I might have certain drills that I like to do, that are working on different parts of my game. And then I'll pick a certain skill. So let's just say, for example, I'll pick a drill that's not like anything secret or top secret, but like say I do a drill like the line drill where I line up all 15 balls across the table, shoot them all in the bottom corners. It's not tough when they're on the second and third diamond. Once they get to the side pocket line or on the where you have to start playing them short side, they're on the third diamond, and you have to play them short side and run them all down in the bottom corners. Then all of a sudden, every shot you're hitting below center, every shot you're stunning back or drawing back. The pockets are tight. You're 5-6 feet away from the pockets. For me, it helps sharpen my eye and get. I'll just tell you, for me, I love the line drill, for example, because at the beginning of the drill, every shot looks like a shot where if it comes up in a game, like I'm going to have to grind that ball in. Take a deep breath, really aim at it, come with the shot. But doing that line drill, that's all you're shooting. So after a while, you can't just come with a shot and come with a shot and come with a shot. You just get into a rhythm where you just look at the contact point, set it at the hole, and it forces you to just kind of elevate. So anyway, that's a drill that I like.
Yep.
Then I might pick a skill. Like, for example, maybe I want to work on, elevated shots. And maybe I want to work on cutting balls to the side, whatever. So maybe that's just a certain shot where, for this week or for a few weeks, I want to really thin cut balls out of the rack area on the side so that when you're playing shape for the 10 ball and you go a little far and you have to cut that ball on the side, I just want to shoot that shot a bunch. So what I might do is I might do the core drill for, 20, 30 minutes. And then I just work on that shot that I want to work on for another 20, 30 minutes. And then, my practice, the regimented part of my practice might only be 40, 45 minutes. And then I'll play. And I feel like, and then maybe I come back and do that twice in a day. Maybe I do that once in a day. But I feel like every time I play, I just do a little bit of a core drill and a little bit of a core skill. And then I have like a little rotation where I have like, 5, 6 drills I'm shuffling between. And I have 5, 6 skills that I'm kind of shuffling between. And then I feel like over the course of a week, I'm hitting most of them, anyway, that's kind of the rhythm I like. How does that compare with I don't know what Fedor does. So what do you?
Well, I like that. What you just described, I really like that. And that's not too far off what I've been doing the last maybe 10 years. I should probably clarify, like when I say like I want to make my practice more regimented, I don't mean I want to make it more strict or more drills or more of that. Really, I feel like I just need better scheduling. I've been finding that I just don't have enough time to hit everything I need to hit. Like, there's so much I want to work on between jump shots, kicking, banking, breaking. Haven't practiced masse shots in like a month. I'm terrible at them.
I got a Revo shaft ever since. Yeah. I got a Revo shaft and I love my Revo, but I'll tell you, my feel on the swerve shots has gone way down. It's the only thing that hasn't really come back. Everything else is good. Do you use carbon fiber?
Yep.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Did that impact your swerve game at all?
A little
Not
bit.
Really.
I think I definitely feel it's a little more difficult with what I'm playing with, which is a 12.9 Revo.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed, like, anytime I'm elevated, I need to be extra careful to hit the center of the cue ball because the cue ball will twirl or masse really easily. And on the sort of the same side of that, when I do need masse or twirl just a little bit, I have a difficult time controlling it.
I found that too. And, there's a shot, I didn't know that you were a big, I love straight pool, and I've played it a lot, and that was the first game I learned. So one of the things that comes up all of the time in straight pool is that swerve shot where you can like almost make the ball. You know what I mean? Where you're like lined up for maybe a couple. You just have to like you kind of have to like swerve just a little and then kind of twist the ball in. And when I was playing a lot of straight pool with a wood shaft, those shots were kind of like hangers. And now it's like my feel on those little half swerve twisty shots. I don't know, man. It just hits. I feel like I'm just kind of hitting hard. Anyway, I'm sorry about that to the listeners that aren't interested in my swerve problems. But okay, so you want to kind of get more regimented just to make sure that you're hitting all the muscle groups of your pool game.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that makes sense. Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to keep going with the conversation for the sake of the podcast, but some other time, Danny, I want to talk to you because I'd love to continue this offline and maybe I can learn something. And anyway, yeah, we can talk again about this offline. I could talk about pool forever, but this podcast, nevertheless, I have a time I got to manage to. So okay, so now that's really really exciting. So you've now the other thing that's interesting is what are your plans? Because like obviously, like when you're 17, 18, 19, you start to become aware of like pool is not, nobody's getting rich playing the game. So what and it's expensive, to travel around and play it when you're not winning, So like what were your thoughts? Like kind of what has been your plan to what are you hoping to how are you hoping to make this work in your life?
Uh, um, that wasn't really something I thought about for really a long time. When I was younger, I didn't care at all, and like I would have played pool if there was no money in it at all. I really would have. Um, the last like 3 or 4 years, though, I mean, I'm 28 now, and I have started thinking about like, okay, what if I want a family? What if I want to, have kids someday? And how am I going to swing that while I'm playing pool? And it's definitely it's kind of a difficult question to answer right now in the game. And I really don't know what. I mean, for most players, it really seems like your only option is to become very, very good. You got to
And so
start winning.
about that, like obviously there's a saying, there's always room for the top if you're good enough. That said, I mean, the level of competition, I mean, would you agree, like even in your lifetime, you have to have seen the game get tougher just from like your first derby till now? I mean, it's gotten very, 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 it's pool's not solved, but like it's closer, you know what I mean? It's getting closer. So like my question for you, because you're young, you're hungry, and you're still getting better. What do you think that you have it within you to get to the top level of the game, or do you struggle with belief at all that you could get to that level? Like here you're 28. There's guys that are 10 years younger than you winning world championships from Europe. Like, do you feel like like do you ever struggle with belief, or do you still kind of feel like everyone has their own journey? I'm still young and I want to get to the top of pool. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't really feel like I've never really felt like I couldn't do it. Like I've
Good.
never felt like some people are just more talented and have had better opportunities and started playing on 9 foots when they were 6 and whatever it is. I've never really like felt like that. For me, the struggle has been not to believe, but to consistently put in the work and to consistently be doing all the right things I need to be doing. Which
Yeah.
I feel like the last 2 years, I've really got to the point where I am doing everything I need to be doing for the most part. I'm always getting better in that area, but yeah. So, I mean, I'm just talking about basic stuff like showing up to the practice table every day and giving it all you have, going to the tournaments you need to be going to push yourself,
Mm-hmm.
playing the big matches that that can make a difference in your career. Like the one with Chris or the one with Shane, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've always said
Getting
input
out there,
equals output, and it seems like what you've kind of done is like every year or two you'll kind of look at what you're doing and you'll look at where you're at and you're saying, well, I'm not at the top yet, got to do more. And then you find a way to get into more action, get into more tournaments, get more disciplined with your practice, put in, or making the practice you're putting in even harder or more impactful. It just seems like you keep raising the bar with yourself as to what you put into the game. Would you, is that fair?
Oh yeah. I think that's definitely probably what happens with a lot of people. I mean, who are on the same path in any sport or whether it's pool. You always you got to keep finding more within yourself. You got to keep finding ways to be a little bit better, and it only ever gets harder as you go. The higher you get, the harder it gets to find those little things and to improve at.
Well, I'm fairly inspired, and I've I've always been a fan, but I've everything you're saying is just everything you've said has made me a bigger and bigger fan. And you're right, all those things that you said, obviously you don't believe them, but they're thoughts that have occurred to you about, if I'd had access to a 9 foot table, or if I'd been mentored by, if I'd grown up where there was more pro pool, or if I'd, if this or if that, or there's so many things that you can do that, but in pool, it's like, you kind of have to, you have to be accountable, and you just have to say, well, I could focus on all the things I don't have, or let's flip it the other way, is like, and I think Shane's a great role model too, because if you want to talk about another guy that grew up not in the middle of nowhere, but I mean, another guy that grew up on bar tables and kind of in a smaller area, and just, he just said, no, here's what's going to happen, and he just went out and did it, and he didn't like, if he played the game that that you aren't playing, if he played the whole, oh well, there's not more 9 foot tables and there's not more good players and I don't have more opportunities, we wouldn't have had the Shane Van Boning we had if he played that game. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's pretty inspiring. So then you've really been working hard the last couple of years, and now what are some of the big I'm sorry, Danny, you're in the spot where you haven't won like a bunch of US Opens yet, but I'll tell you, you've had some good finishes. Now, did you make the finals of the Super Billiard Expo Pro event, or what was it? What am I thinking about? Was that what happened, or
Yep, that was a 2018 Billiards Expo, and I think it's New Jersey.
okay? I is I think I went in. I think I went in 2019. It was Pennsylvania, but was it New Jersey at the time? I don't remember. So
Maybe it is in
anyway,
Pennsylvania. It's around there somewhere.
yeah. So you went to the Super Billiard Expo, and was that your biggest tournament finish at the time?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I
Without
mean,
a doubt.
that's a heck of a performance. That tournament, for those that don't know,
Hmm.
the pro event in that tournament. I mean, I think the next year James Aranis won it, and I mean, I remember watching, and I can't remember all the name players that were there, but it was, it was definitely not a local tour stop. So who did who were some of the players you beat on your way to the final match?
Oh, let me think. I played Johnny Archer, uh, Torsten Holman. I think Torsten Holman gave me my loss, actually, my first
Okay.
loss. And then I played Oscar Dominguez, John Mora, a couple other pretty good players I don't remember.
Hmm.
And then I ended up playing Mike DeShane in the finals, and he beat me, obviously.
Yeah, it's like one long set in the finals. Is it like one extended race to 13 or something?
No, I think it was a race to 11. I think he
Okay.
beat me 11-8.
Oh, that's a tough one, man. That's close.
Yep, and I had a few opportunities that I missed that could have made the swing for me.
But that's okay, because then you know that you can do it. Then you're like, well,
Oh
shoot,
yeah,
man. I mean, I can get there. I was like one shot away from winning the thing. Yeah, that's pretty
yeah.
awesome, man.
I definitely wasn't unhappy. I mean, maybe for like a few minutes after the match, but it was my first time being in a major tournament final, and really, I mean, I was just happy to get there. It was because even at the time I wasn't playing much actually. I hadn't practiced for like 2 weeks before that tournament. I kind of decided to go last minute because a friend of mine was going and offered to pay my entry and take me. So I really went into that tournament without any expectations at all. So getting to the finals, I was just like, wow, this is great.
That's
And
that's
yeah,
awesome, man. I mean, that's such a good moment. And it's got to just reinvigorate you, and what do you call it? Not validate, but like, yeah, kind of validate all your belief in yourself and all your goals and all the hard work. And it's just it's such a positive thing when that happens where you're like, yep, I'm on the right path. I can keep going. And so, and then you just push the gas pedal down even harder and say, okay, well, let's keep doing more. So speaking of doing more, talk to me about like, these matches. So it's COVID. It's been kind of disruptive because there wasn't a lot of tournaments last year. What, You got in the ring with a couple of really, really strong U.S. players. Shane McMahon. So for those that don't know, he played Shane McMahon a race to 100 10 ball. What? I'm no. I'm sorry. You
Yeah,
played Chris Robinson a race to 100. Shane McMahon, you played like 2 out of 3 sets to like what 21, 25, something like that.
um, I think it was race to 15, best 2 out of 3.
Okay, race to 15, best 2 out of 3 sets. So okay, and what I thought about these matches was at the time when you played, okay, these guys are not, the top players, but these guys play good and they're, they're strong US players. And, but I remember thinking like Danny's been like you're like the guy that you're like the guy that was like went to jail and you're just been working out for like 12 hours a day and you just got out of jail and it's like who wants to fight that guy? Like I just felt like you've been in lockdown, like doing your drills and practicing and you're breaking like a beast. Like I watched you in these VG10s and your break was one that I watched a lot and I was really trying to model myself after because it was so good. The first VG10 you were using this nice open bridge medium speed, just really, really, really good breaking. And I
Yep.
watched that and I was just like, man, anybody that's not like exactly, Albin Ocean or Shane or something is going to have a really, really hard time with this guy. And so when you were stepping up and playing them, and that's how a lot of people felt was it was stepping up. But I was like, this is I felt like the opportunities were very, very ripe. So when you went into those matches, Shane McMahon was first. Um, what were your thoughts going in? Like, did you feel optimistic going in, or was it just kind of like you? I mean, I it's on the one hand, like I don't know if you've beat a player. Had you beaten a player that good for money in a public setting before? I'll just ask.
Um, Not in a match that was like marketed like that, and that was
Okay, it was your first like poster kind
it
of match, like yeah, the first like live stream action match kind of thing. So here you are getting into your first like the action match kind of stream with the big Facebook following and the pay per view or whatever. So it's like
yeah.
when you're going into that match, on the one hand, like I'm not trying to put, I guess I'm putting words in your mouth. Like if I were hitting them like you were, I'd be feeling like, man, I'm in shape. Like I'm ready for about anybody. But at the same time, this guy has done it before. This guy is the favorite on paper. How did you feel going into that? Were you optimistic or were you not sure what was going to happen? Or did you kind of know what was going to happen?
No, I didn't know what was gonna happen. I was actually going into it. I was nervous because up until that match, all I had been doing for pretty much all of COVID was just hitting balls by myself. I'm not even sure if I played a single tournament. I might have played one like little bar table tournament one weekend. But yeah, no, going into it, I did not have my competitive edge. Like, I really don't even have it now just because I haven't been competing that much. I have a little more of it now. If you know what I'm talking about, kind of just that comfort with gambling and matching up and
Yeah. Well, that acclamation, I mean, for sure. It's like when you're playing by yourself and you haven't been exposed. Like you haven't been in a spot where you faced a shot where you're like, I could miss this, I could lose, this guy could beat me if I don't do this. Like this is just that feeling of being exposed and having somebody playing back at you and putting heat on you and having to be in your chair, like having just shaken off a couple blunders and watching them punish you with a bunch of racks and they're hitting their gear and it's like all the doubts and fears and distractions and the pressures and it's like yeah, when you don't face that for a while, not only are you a little bit off, but like then you get nervous because you're like, am I going to be able to handle it again? It's going to hit me like a cold shower.
yeah, definitely. That's how I was feeling. And I mean, I felt really confident in my game. I was playing really good at the time, and I mean, I still am. But I was on the practice table every day before that match for hours. I was in stroke. I knew I had what it took to, I mean, win the match. But really, my goal though was knowing that I hadn't played in any big matches like that, and under any pressure. My goal was just to handle that pressure well when it came.
That makes perfect sense. And the fact that you've read like all these books and prepared your mental game and stuff like that, I mean, that really, really speaks well, because I couldn't agree more. It's like, you've got the game, but it's about getting in there and being able to manage through all the stuff that comes up during competition, and then kind of being prepared for the unprepared, because you can't really prepare for everything. So there's good, no matter how hard you prepare on the table, and no matter how hard you work, there's going to be moments that things kind of start going sideways, and you have to just look at yourself in the mirror and come with it.
Yep, that's cool. That's life.
That is. So then after winning that, I was really, really, really proud of you. And then you get in the ring with Chris Robinson and play a race to 110 ball. And this
Yep.
again, Chris, Mosconi Cup player, great player. It's but it's like, I'm just watching how you play, and it's just like, you just have to, like, if you get distracted by the number of patches on a shirt or whatever, that's one thing. But it's like, you know what I mean? But it's like, if you could just kind of keep your locked on the table and just keep doing what you do, what you're doing is hard for, it's hard for anybody right now. So same kind of thing, kind of same story, right? You kind of felt good going in, and just tell me about getting into that match.
Well, leading up to that match, I wasn't as nervous going in to play Shane, because before that match for like 2 weeks, I was in constant action. I was my routine was pretty much practice 3 or 4 hours hard in the morning, take a little break, eat lunch, and then go to a pool hall and gamble for the rest of the night. So I was really in stroke for that match. I was more mentally prepared, and I mean, I didn't really feel like what was going to happen. I didn't feel like that was going to happen. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen.
What was the final score? I know it was like 100 to, was it 100 to 70? I don't remember exactly. I know
100 to 65.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was something like that. That's and it wasn't like it was even until day 3 or something. It was like you kind of outscored them like almost 2-1 on the first day, got like a 14 rack lead or something, and then just kind of extended it the whole way, and something like that. So that was
Yep.
how did that go? Like, when you guys played, like, what was the difference that allowed you to outscore them? Did you shoot straighter? Did you make less misses? Were you just breaking better? Like, what do you feel like? What do you attribute that success to?
Um, I wouldn't attribute to really any one thing. I know a lot of people have been talking about the break, which obviously is always a big factor, but I feel like for the most part in that particular match, I did everything just a little bit better than him. Probably did the break the most better, even though I don't feel like his break was bad. I feel like he never quite found the right break for himself. I feel like he didn't adjust enough. He kind of, I'm not quite sure, but it looked like he was just doing the same thing over and over to me. And you know what I'm saying? And, but just like the safeties, the shot making, the decision making, I feel like for me, I was really just doing the best I could with everything.
Yeah, you were just kind of
the
on.
few stretches in the match, I had a few low points, but overall, I was really, really happy with how I played.
For sure. Well, you're going to have some in a race to 100. There's going to be patches, right? I've always felt like in long sessions like that, so this is what's rare about this is usually the momentum swings back and forth, and that usually it's the person that can capitalize on things when they're going well for them. So in other words, suppose you're playing somebody and things are going good for you, and then things are going good for them. If you could, when things are going good for you, if you could score more racks and amass a bigger lead, then you give up when things are going well for them. So if you could get 6 ahead when things are going your way, and then only drop 3 or 4 when things are going their way, then eventually you're going to extend a lead. But there wasn't even a huge, I mean, you might have had some lulls, but there wasn't any real huge momentum swings. And one thing I was really interested in, Tyler Steyer played Chris a race to 100, and Tyler jumped out to a lead on day 1, and then Chris overcame that deficit on day 2. Do you remember
Yep.
that? Or you tied it up. And so and now Tyler hit a bit of a lull there. That's not what this is about. So we'll go back to you. But I guess when you got that lead on day one, I was really interested to see if Chris could come back. And in my opinion, the only way that Chris could overcome that would be if you not let up. I mean, that's not the right phrase, but if you got sharked by that lead, like if you started, like there's questions that you ask, right? Like you're sitting
Yep.
there after day one and you're like, is it possible that it goes this well for me? Is it? And then you start having stupid, maybe you don't, but I start having stupid thoughts like, I wonder if is it over? Like, is this cinched up now? Am I safe now? I wonder if I could play my B game and still win from here. I wonder, is he just going to give it to me? Is it going to be easy from this point? And you start having all these weak thoughts. And it's like, it's really easy to get rattled when you're in that position. You've also thoughts like, oh, I've proven I'm a better player now and all this stuff like that, where it's like, no, there's a lot of pool and he's going to try to beat you, but it's like, it's easy to like kind of get sharked by one of those things. So how did you handle it on the first night? Like, because I think one of the most impressive things you did was playing good out of the gate on day two, considering how many of those distracting thoughts you might have to deal with. I think that might have been the hardest, other than coming out of the gate. I think that might have been a really critical part of the match, was coming out strong on day two. How did you do that?
Well, for
Like,
each day,
did you have any of those thoughts I was talking about?
oh yeah, I mean a little bit, yeah. Not all of them, but a few of them crossed my mind. Like the first day, I was totally focused on just my game and shooting every shot with all my ability. I think a few people mentioned they thought I was playing a little slower than normal, and I definitely was. I was really taking every shot seriously. I was trying to make the best possible choice on every shot I could. I was really just giving it everything I had. And then you're right, like I got a big lead that day, and I was going into day two. I'm like, wow, I'm up 16 games, and my goal at that point was just to keep the pressure on Chris. I'm like, I don't need to repeat day one. I don't need to play that good again. You can't always play that good. I didn't want to make anything easy for him. I wanted to make things as hard as possible for him as I could. Whether
Yes.
I think that kind of shown through my decision making on some of my shots. Like I wasn't going for anything crazy ever, and I usually do go for some crazy shots every now and again. And I just didn't want to ever make anything easy for him.
Well, I really like what you're saying.
That you need to make it easy for them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. One thing when it comes to game management, you're talking about a long session here, and I have found that there is nothing that will breathe life into a defeated opponent faster than making a fumble and hanging up a ball for them. Like if you want your opponent to like get back on their feet, like say you run up to the six ball and you've got a really kind of a challenging six ball and you try to fire it down the rail and force the cue ball somewhere that it doesn't want to go, and you hang that six ball up, like to them, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this guy's making mistakes and maybe he's not really in the present, or he's not, that was a loose decision, or that was a little ambitious. And now I got this hanging six ball and I can kind of get back and run these balls out and get a little rhythm. It's like, but if you get off the shot and instead you just lay down a good safety and lock them beyond the 8, it's like, man, they're walking to the table. They're like, man, this guy's not going to give me. I mean, it's suffocating. It's just totally suffocating. And when you're down 16 racks, like maybe out of the gate is different, but when you're down 16 racks, it's like you need your opponent, like you said, you need your opponent to kind of start getting a little bit like overconfident, a little bit relaxed, and kind of getting a little loose, and then maybe leaking out some unforced errors. And when they're just like, nope, I'm determined to just keep focused and keep making good decisions and keep putting in maximum effort, it's pretty hard to like, it's pretty discouraging to be in Chris's shoes. You're right. Like, I think he really needed you to like, he needed you to kind of go sideways there, because if you kept doing what you're doing, it's nothing against him. It's just, anybody would have a hard time from that spot.
Yep.
Well, that's a huge win, man. So I want to congratulate you on both those wins. Do you have any other action matches coming up or anything else like that? Like, what's in your future here?
Oh, yeah, me and my sponsor, Havoc Productions, which is Chad Shoulder's company, is a good friend of mine also. It's most of my discussion with whom I'm playing next has been with him, and we have a few ideas. We haven't really decided on who or where or when we're going to play, but there is something in the works, and I'm hoping it's going to.
Couple random questions. And then I'll let you see if there's anything you wanted to add. But
Yep.
what do you feel like your strengths are as a player? Like, what do you feel like allows you to have this level of success you have?
Oh, I'm really stubborn. Probably got that from my parents. Honestly, I don't really know if there's any like one particular thing. I mean, I definitely know what all my weaknesses are, all the things that hold me back. I think it's for anybody, it's kind of harder to see like what your strengths are. But if I had to say what mine are, I take my practice pretty seriously.
Yeah, it sounds like persistence. I mean, determination and
Yeah,
persistence.
persistent. Yeah, never giving up. And there's been a lot of times when I have wanted to give up. Pool can definitely be a rough sport if you're not winning all the time.
Yeah, well, and the better you get, the more you lose because you just end up playing better and better players. It's like,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It's like, it was you probably won more when you were 16 than in 2019. But anyway, so yeah, persistence. Do you have any like quotes or books or anything that you'd recommend? Like any inspirational quotes that you really like?
There's so many quotes, inspirational stuff like that I like, but I can never remember any of them.
Okay,
Um,
so
but there have been things that have influenced me a lot. I wouldn't say they're like quotes or books though. Like I watch a lot of like elite performers on YouTube.
okay,
That inspires me a lot. Like the other day I was watching I don't know her name, but she does sort of acrobats on a bicycle. She's been like on Ellen DeGeneres, but she's it's kind of hard to describe what it actually is. You'll have to Google it and find it if you want to see. But she's
okay.
absolutely incredible at what she does. It's just mind-boggling. And when and there's lots of people like that in the world, and I love to watch them and see what they're doing and figure out how they got where they got what they do every day. And that's really kind of one of the big things that fuels me and makes me keep showing up at my practice table and giving it as much as I can.
That's right. I enjoy the same thing, and I find myself I could go down the YouTube rabbit hole watching like doesn't matter if it's like watching a video game or speed run or watching somebody who's like skipping stones, like where they get the stone to skip like 83 times, and I'm like, how do you? I didn't even think that was a thing. I mean, it's just like
Right.
you look at like somebody that's the best in the world at anything, and it's pretty amazing, like what the human mind can develop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is incredible.
That's cool. So no, and any what about a favorite movie? Do you have like a favorite? Mine's like I like The Rookie. I'm like the Rookie guy. I don't know if
Um,
you've seen that movie where the guy's like the pitcher. He's like a little bit older, and he
Remember
coaches
Dennis
baseball.
Quaid?
Yeah, yeah. You know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
I like that one. What
That's a
about you?
great
Do you have a
movie.
favorite sports movie?
Favorite sports movie. Yeah, there's one with Mark Wahlberg. Um, it's a football movie. I can't quite remember the name of it though.
I'll look it up here.
Yeah,
Invincible. Invincible.
yeah, Invincible. I watched that one like a few months ago. I really like that one.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out. I have not seen that, so I'm going to add that to my queue. Looks like it's PG. I could even watch it with the kids, so that's fantastic. And what about? Let's see here. What advice would you give to young players coming up that that might be listening to this podcast that are trying to follow in your footsteps?
Be clear on what you want to yourself. Like, if you just want to play pool for fun, I mean, that's fine. That's great. If you want to be the greatest player in the world, that's great too. But just know what you want and be smart. I mean, the more you want, the more ways and angles you're going to have to attack it from. And it's just all about learning. I mean, just keep learning every day, learn something new, get a little better every week, and eventually you'll get wherever you want to go.
I like it. I think the thing about what you're saying with clear goals is that when you're vague and you're just kind of like, well, I want to get good. Well, then the
Yep.
problem is, then the problem is that you might have an idea. Okay, well, I'll play and match up with people. I just throw my stick at the balls and I'll get good. But when you set really clear, like, no, this is, I need to make my game look like this. It needs to be at this level. It needs to be this strong in these ways. Then all of a sudden, you might say, hey, I want to just kind of hit some balls and go gamble and play some tournaments and whatever. But oh, will that get me there? All of a sudden, you're forced. So when you set a clear goal, you're forced to answer the question of, am I on track to get there? And if the answer is no, you're forced to ask, what do I need to change so that I do?
Yep.
Whereas if you
Exactly.
just kind of have it murky, like I'm going to get better, it doesn't really force you to answer that question, which is, am I on track? Do I need to make any adjustments? And one of what we just talked about is like one of your secret weapons has been persistence and hard work and elevating the amount of input that you put into your game every day, every year, I should say. And you would not have been elevating your level of input if you just been like, well, I'll just keep working. I'm sure it'll come together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, I remember what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, you mentioned earlier about lessons, giving some
Yep.
instruction. So you're in Denver. Tell me about that. Are you doing some lessons out there in Denver? Tell me about that.
I usually do when I'm out here. I haven't done any this trip just because I've been so busy with these matches and some of the Havoc produced events. But yeah, I do lessons. I didn't do them for a really long time. I never people asked and I said I don't teach, but the last few years that's changed, and I've actually found that I really like teaching, and it's helped my own game a lot.
I'm not surprised. I've had a very similar experience. In fact, it's funny that I told people I didn't teach for 20 years as well. Like I just want to play, But and the thing that got me though is that the players that aren't very serious about the game, like that are like it's fine, recreational players that want to learn how to bridge and shoot. That's fine. But what got me were the players that in my opinion weren't as hungry or disciplined, where they're surfing their phone and eating nachos and drinking beers and joking around, and then they want to take lessons. And I'm like, man, you don't want a lesson from me. I'm going to tell you to put the beer down, turn your phone off, quit talking to him. Like, you're just not going to, like, we're not going to fit. You know what I mean? So, like,
You know?
how did you, what changed for you? What made you, start experiencing that different?
Um, no, I couldn't really say what exactly did it. It might have just been growing up, getting a little bit more mature.
Mm,
I mean, for a long time, I'm still young. I was just a young kid, and people were asking me, like people 30 years old, older than me, were asking me for lessons. I'm like, I don't know. And
sure.
a lot of it was also just, actually, this is probably what it was. I was just kind of, I mean, I was always kind of shy and introverted as a kid, and the idea of like being in that role as a teacher and um, taking charge like that and sharing all my knowledge and critiquing someone, it was all kind of just foreign to me. I wasn't just ready to just jump into that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It wasn't that you didn't have the knowledge of the game, but maybe just the comfort level jumping into that kind of leading role or something like that. I could see that, especially with when you're young and there's these people are yeah. That makes perfect sense. But something else, the one thing I feel like we have in common is there are people out there that don't love pool as much as they love competition. And so they like winning and they like being good and they like being looked up to, but they don't necessarily that to them, pool is just kind of like something that they have to do and you know, just so that they can get what they want. Whereas with you, I mean, you even said it from the very beginning, which is when you got into the game. Yes, you liked the competition, but you loved the game. And I feel like when you love the game, then you enjoy seeing other people develop a relation. I mean, what your relationship with the game is and what it
Yep.
means to you and the discoveries you've made and how profound what role it's been in your life, and to be able to encourage that and help other people experiencing the game and higher levels and have the satisfaction of breaking through barriers. uh it's a treat, and it's like I'm not quitting competition myself, and I don't want you to quit competition, but there's room in life to share the joy,
Oh yeah,
so it's awesome.
definitely very rewarding sharing what I've learned, and I think all teachers, I mean, feel that. It's a great thing for the game, and for everyone involved, the student, the teacher.
Yeah. So that's cool. So if anybody's interested in lessons right now, you're out in Denver, how should they reach you, Danny? What's the best way to reach you?
Oh, Facebook or my website, my website is dannyolson.me.
Cool. All right. Well, then I'll tell you what. I think that should be a wrap. If people want more information, well, you and I will talk again. So anybody that has any questions that you wish I'd asked Danny, I mean, you can post it all when we drop this podcast. I'm sure we'll drop it on Facebook. So you can just post questions in the comments. Maybe I could get Danny to troll through and answer any questions I didn't ask. But and otherwise, I don't think it'll be the last we heard of you because I kind of have a feeling I know where things are going to go in the future, and I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot more opportunities for you to be behind a microphone.
I hope so.
Awesome, Danny. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking time and sharing that with me today, and it's been a real honor to get to know you better.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.